Okay, so welcome to the third developer log for Rifter, and in this one we're going to model some buildings, but more importantly, like I said in the last one, we're going to be doing it modular, which means I'll be experimenting with the grid snap function in Maya, and that should be pretty fun to work with. I think I do this over and over quite a few times because I can't quite grasp why it's going wrong or why in fact it's going right. Um, so here I'm just deleting the sides of a cube. I also extrude the face inwards to create like a window, and then I bevel it, just for some foresight there, for you to sort of have a perspective on this. But more importantly, this is where I show kind of the brute of how I build the buildings. As I said there, look, I'm extruding this inwards, and getting the scale right is quite difficult. This building does look very good in game, however it's not scaled correctly to the player. It's like 2 stories high and it makes you feel like a giant, so even when it's scaled correctly, and also you've got to think about the environment, like the interior. If you've got an interior space and the exterior doesn't match it, you walk in, you feel really weird, like the bar isn't so big, but it's still good. Excuse me. But I work on this quite a few times in a few developer logs, but I think today I just build a basic modular set. I start working on pillars, and I looked online at a reference. It was for a game called Dishonored, which is probably my biggest contextual influence. It's not some old game, which seems to be the common thing I have to do is look at old games, but this is a fairly recent game. It's called Dishonored, and I'm following the similar architecture. I'm following similar architecture for my buildings in the game, which I feel is a good idea because it's a very good game and it matches exactly what I want. Okay, sorry about that. That was my dog barking in the background. That's not very professional of me, but I guess these things happen. So I'm working on the window here, or at least the sort of indentation for the window. And as you can see, this is where the grid snapping comes in, and how you can see it sort of snaps seamlessly together. It's pretty awesome. And I can also snap to points, so snap to grid, snap to points, and snap to, I think, curves, and also snap to view planes, which is what you're looking at, like the grid, and you have the different view planes. You have side, front, top, and perspective, which is what I'm in now. So that's all good. So here I decided to speed up the video because I'm realizing it's 2 hours and 38 minutes long, which is not good for public consumption, consumer consumption. In this case, my assessor, whoever is assessing my work, isn't going to want to watch a 2.5 hour video for a building, which doesn't even turn out to be a full building. It's just a modular set I can build with. So here you can see it's a lot faster. It's 350 times the speed, in fact. I'm doing all this again, but it'll go by so quickly. And now it's only 45 minutes long. I honestly can't shorten them any longer because then it just wouldn't show my development. So to my assessor, little hint. I can't shorten them any longer because then you wouldn't be able to see any of the development at all. It would just be lackluster and there wouldn't be anything to see me doing. And it's so quick I can't really explain what's happening now. Well, I can because it's post-commentary. So again, I'm just extruding. And create a separate folder for the modular set, which is the scene I'm in right now, and I'm building just a basic building, and it turns out to look pretty good. And I think the very first building I built was actually a lot smaller than the bar or the pub. So I start working on some pillars, which I have to align to the grid also, which seems to be a bit of a pain to work with. And I have to make sure there's no like clipping edges or it looks weird or odd. So yeah, and I make it look pretty good. somewhere along the line, but it does change. It does change. I changed the width of the pillar. I changed the overall shape and geometry of it. As you can see, I just beveled it there. Didn't look very good. Now, the reason I need these pillars is because it just looks boring without them, and it adds another layer of detail. And also, when you have a whole set of walls, and then you duplicate the pillars upwards to create like a second story or floor, you need to have the pillars to sort of avoid seams in your models. Because when you do modular, sometimes you get seams, and if you don't, that's good. But it's always good to have that extra bit of detail for the model. And obviously in games, they don't just add like a massive building into the game. They model it, and they take time to think about the way it's going to look. It's looking pretty good. Again, this is a 2-hour long video. Well, it's 45 minutes now, but it was fairly astonishing. Now, here's where I think I lose my... I can't figure out how to do duplication upwards, or rather grid snap it on the... It would be the Z axis, or no, it'd be the X, or no, the Y. It would be. So I add this in, which is just not even an aesthetic thing. I just wanted to make sure that when I pulled the faces up, or the modular pieces to the top there, it wouldn't clip, it wouldn't look weird. But in the end, I actually do use this as kind of a point of reference. It just looks cool. So here I'm sort of slowly but surely going in the right direction. I realise that I need to go into the side view plane, or the front view plane, in order to snap it to the grid. Upwards, anyway. And I mirror the geometry here. It's a pretty cool way of doing it. And then I also bridge the two faces across to snap into the middle, you'll see now. Or the edges, actually. And a bridge essentially allows you to connect one thing to the other. So if you have two edges, they bridge together to meet in the middle, but they also subdivides it, like you saw. And here I'm just adding like minor details to the geometry of this mesh, and it's looking pretty cool. I think in the end I actually remodeled the whole thing, which is a bit odd, but you know, it shows the development. Because I actually do the snapping wrong, and it just doesn't look right. So, for the second kind of piece of my modular set, I think I focus on a doorway, or just a flat wall, and then I do a doorway, and then I do another window, and things like that. So there is a variety to look at of what I've done in this particular developer log. You may or may not notice in the background, if I've decided to do this, I've added some music to suit the game's theme, or at least the theme I'm going for. Depends, I'm not really sure, but that's irrelevant because this is a developer log on what I'm developing, not the music I'm using. But I guess that's kind of relevant in a sense, because the music, if it doesn't suit the game, you know, maybe I could get marked down on that. I'm not really sure how, but it's possible. So here I'm realizing that I can use the view planes to snap correctly instead of messing this up. There we go. Perfect. This is pretty cool for me because I've never actually built a modular kind of building before or anything. So this is all new for me. It's all a learning experience, all a learning curve. It's all apparent as well, because I need to learn how to do this if I'm going to be, making my own games or just making games in general. So again, to sort of jog your memory, the theme of my game is a steampunk, sort of Victorian style. I'm not sure what I'm doing with, as I said, the music, because I like to kind of fit the music to my game, because that gives me inspiration for what I want to model. Like for instance, I've done the banners and the posters, which is in probably the next developer log you'll see. And the next developer log you see, you also see some Photoshop work, so that's pretty cool. And I did some designs for there's a company in the game. It's just it's just a part of the. It's not really part of the story. It's just there to look good. It's called Foreman Cigars, and it's like a picture of. It's like kind of a nice cigar texture on the sort of billboard. It's looking pretty cool. And then I've got the name of the city, which is Brimstone, and it's Brimstone Transporters, and Brimstone Transporters is, you guessed it, a transport service, so you can actually rent out, like, for instance, an airship. That's obviously advanced stuff for, like, the game, that'd be so cool if I could do that, if I could have it so you can rent out an airship and fly it around, or even buy one. That would be insane. But then again, you'd have to have a whole city to explore, and I really don't have time to build every single corner of the world, and also the city isn't so big. But I guess you could do like a fast travel system in where you pay money, let's say like gold pieces or cogs. You could have the currency as cogs, that'd be cool. And then you would essentially buy like a ticket onto the boat or the airship, and then you can go and it'll take you to your destination, let's say like West Brimstone or East Brimstone or Brimstone Suppliers, which is like a general goods store. I'm coming up with these ideas on the spot because I want to show my development and how I come up with ideas. So, and this video is sort of like a background to me talking, because I can't really explain what I'm doing. What it is duplicating and moving around. It's really self-explanatory. And in terms of extrusion, that's probably my main tool. And you've got the beveling, you've got scaling, and it's not really much to it. It looks complicated, but in actual fact, if you just learn the program, it's actually a lot easier. So here I just end up messing around with this, and I just get so frustrated and confused. I did spend about 2.5 hours on this, as I said, which took me a very long time. It was very time consuming and boring to work with. Actually, it wasn't really boring, but towards the end I got a bit frustrated because I just wanted to get it to work. But at the same time, I'm patient with it. I'm using a lot of modify center pivot, and the center pivot, if you notice the gizmo that comes up when you move or you scale or you rotate, that's the center pivot. So you can actually move it to anywhere on the model. You can snap it to the vertices, you can snap it to the points and the edges, and anywhere around the object, if anything. And modify center pivot, which is at the top, you go to modify and you center the pivot. It just centers the gizmo, the pivotal point of your model. Like here, this just works perfectly because the doorway is perfectly aligned. And I want to do like a small interior for this. Like I think I decide to shell out the windows in the end. I actually take that, duplicate it over, like I'm doing now, and actually I use mesh booleans, which allows you to basically cut out a hole and other things. And it just looks cool, so I keep it in there, and I think it helps me later on when I decide to make an interior, because I just use the same modular set. I just take apart the pieces and build another building in the same scene. So here's where I figure out the whole snap to grid thing on the view planes. I think. I hope I do. I'm pretty sure I do. I do eventually. I notice that it's not snapping properly, and then I put it upwards, and it just all works. And I'm so excited. I think for my first building, in terms of a modular building, there you go. I worked it out in the end. It's pretty good. The later ones, they're less detailed, but they look cooler because they've got a different design to them. They've got this kind of Victorian, slightly grimy look to them. It looks pretty cool. And I think I've recorded the later one. I hope I have, because if I haven't, that's going to be a pain, because I've got dozens of development hours of development, just videos of where I've shown the later buildings and the later sort of ideas and development. So here I'm just snapping to points and trying to align these two pillars. And again, I'm going into the front and side view to kind of work out how this all snaps together. And I try and make it look cool, and it just doesn't work, and I have to like tear it down again. And I think that's actually the final version, that there. Pretty sure it is. And here I'm just duplicating and aligning them all correctly. I think this is where it goes wrong, actually. Because we're only 15 minutes into the video, which is unbelievable. But in hindsight, this would be 3 times that. So like 45 minutes, 3/4 of an hour, roughly, into it, which is actually the length of this video, because I've changed the speed of it. So here I'm just working on the doorway again, because I've decided it doesn't look very good, and also the windows don't match it really. But then of course I realise I need a flat wall, which is the one on the left there, instead of just windows all the way around. Or maybe not, or maybe I do have windows all the way around. I always thought that there was a middle section where there were no windows. But again, with Victorian, there's a lot of windows. Bay windows is a good example. The massive bay windows that let all the light in. Again, here I'm just beveling the edges of some of the mesh, because it makes it look kind of smoother and all well put together, or all rounded, just well put together. There's a lot of close-up shots in this developer log, so I'm trying to show all my like development, and of course I'm just building. Just trying to build and make it look good, and I have to snap all this to the points and make sure it doesn't have seams or areas which don't look good or things of that nature. I think my favourite developer log so far is the one where I model the later buildings, or the buildings I've done. So like up until this point, this one is the first one, the very first one, and the next ones are a bit more complex, and they involve a lot more geometry, and they're very fun sort of to work with because they got different roof types. But here I decided the pillars don't match. That's a bit of a pain when you model a whole entire scene and you model these extravagant pillars and walls and windows, and then you realise, yeah, that doesn't look so good, I'm going to redo the whole thing. That's not ideal. I think I actually mirror the geometry here. If I'm right, I mirror the geometry on the y-axis, so it flips it upward. As you can just see, that was pretty cool to look at. And it does it to the T, well, to the Y, but perfectly. There's a strange sort of edge loop here, which I don't know where it came from, but if you look on the side there, I've got this massive kind of gauge, or well, I say a gouge really, but it's just a kind of line that goes through, and I don't know where it came from. But I think in the end I sort of just leave it there and just deal with it. I don't know if you can see, but in the time in the video, it's 8:30 at night. I think that's 8:30. Yep. Which is pretty late to be working, I guess. Especially when this video was 2 hours long, and I ended up going to sleep at about 3 in the morning. That's how much I work on it. I think in the next one I'm actually up later. You'll probably see me up at about midnight, roughly. And that's the great thing about these developer logs, is I'm putting in the hours to try and produce something good to look at, I guess. I think what's going to be really fun is when I bring it all into into Unity 3D, into the editor, and it just goes well together. I hope it does, because I've tried to follow a similar theme. I've used the same textures, because you've got like the repetition of the models and the textures, because if you use like too many different textures, it's just going to look strange. In a lot of games they just use like a palette of textures. They just look good, and they vary them up. In the latest games anyway. I guess in older games it's not really the same concept or the same principle, because they probably used a different method of texturing. Because you've got like tessellation now in later games, like a good example is Thief. It's pretty new, and the texturing and the textures are very procedural. I feel like they don't look the same in any area, as far as I'm concerned, because that's how they do it. They make it look real by having it kind of, there's like tessellation and there's like asymmetry, which is the opposite of symmetry. So it's not symmetrical, or there's areas which are natural looking, so not uniform, basically. I think Rifter as a game is a basic concept, but it's a lot to work on. I'm really excited to see the final product, to be honest, because for me the Easter holidays are coming up, and I'm probably just going to finish all the modelling in the Easter holidays. Just every ounce of 3D modelling is going to get done in the Easter holidays when I have a week off. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to sit and work on it all week. Because I start on a Wednesday, it'd be 10 days roughly, 10 days to work on it, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it probably is when you start thinking about the hours I can put in. And these developer logs are just to show my development, so I don't actually have to worry about when I'm recording. I don't talk over it, and that's probably, for me, was a very good choice to make, because I can't do two things at once, or I can, but I can do two things at once, but they're to a decent standard, but not like a very good standard. So if I'm modeling, I can model to my standard. But if I'm modeling and I'm talking, I got to worry about what I'm explaining, and it's just I got to stop and say, look, I'm doing this. And in post commentary, you can just talk over and say, I'm doing this right now. Like for instance, now I'm doing the second story of the house, the second floor, and I put the floor in, put the ground floor and the top floor in, which doesn't even get used, but I'm using this as kind of a basic concept for me to work on later on, so I can get an idea of how modular building works in Maya. And this is where things start to go a little bit pear-shaped, because the whole thing is just wrong in terms of the grid snapping. It's not scaled correctly, and sometimes you just got to do it freehand. You can't grid snap, or at least I'm not a professional, so I can't do it. I can afford to do it freehand, but some companies probably don't like their employees doing. If you're building a modular set, it's better to, if you do it freehand, you have inconsistencies in your model. So you have like, oh, this is all perfectly symmetrical, and then you have this random area which just doesn't look right. Like here at the back, there's no way I'm going to leave it like that. And in the end, it fits together quite well. But the pillar on the back is a lot more thicker. It sort of juts out more, which I guess isn't too much of a problem, because I don't think I'll even be using this building in the end, because it's just such a small little building. It'll probably just be used as kind of background or filler. Whereas the latest buildings I've modelled are more advanced, and they're pretty cool to look at, and they're, I think, like 10 times the size. It's just like, not ridiculous, but how you would expect it to be in real life. So you look up and you feel human. You don't feel like a giant in comparison to this building. And then in the next one, I do another building. I'm not sure if I'll show it. It depends. I don't think I'll be doing any narration. I'll just I'll just upload it as a singular kind of chunk. I guess I'll get more marks if I do show my development on that particular building, because it's going to show my interior modelling skills as well as my exterior. But again, I need to show the interactivity of the game, so that's going to be a very important part. But that's kind of easy for me, because I can just put the character controller in, which is already done. I can do the opening cutscene, and I can do some basic scripting to create nice effects in the game, or some interactivity, because you can on the airship. I guess you could say the interactivity is the fact that you can walk around the environment, and the very fact that there's going to be like a main menu and etc., etc. Like different parts of the game are interactive. That's actually my brief. My brief is to make a. It's very broad, and it's very out of context, or rather, there's no context. It's just sort of make something interactive and show all your research and development. That's the key part. I think is the fact that you have to show as much research and as much development as you possibly can, which for me I don't mind doing because I just think it'll look it's fun. Like, I don't have to really try too much. I just record it whilst I'm modelling. I don't have to worry about it not working, or I don't have to worry about doing screen grabs, because in my previous projects for college I just did screen grabs and put them on my Blogger, which is the platform obviously we use in college to sort of display our work, and I don't want to do that. I refuse to take screen grabs. I'm just going to do videos and talk about what I'm doing. So here I'm doing sort of chimneys on top of this building. They're not really chimneys, I don't really know what they are. They're like trellises, or like just things that look cool, I think. I think I actually get rid of them in the end, because I just experiment with different models, and I look at it and I say, does that look good? And if I say no, I just delete the whole thing. Like here, I mesh combine them all, and then I bring them back to create like a load of them at the back. But then again, I decide to get rid of them. As for my research for this game, there's not really much I can do other than Victorian architecture, which I did look at, and also some games that I looked at. That's definitely a good one. I've got to look at games that have inspired me, because there has been. I'm not sure if I get marked down for that. If I do, then I think that's a bit silly, because, you know, I'm looking at someone else's game and saying, well, this is inspiring to me, I'm going to use it as a contextual influence. That looks awesome. I'm going to take inspiration from that. I haven't modelled anything to the T or copied anything. I've just looked at architecture and thought, okay, so what's good about that? What's good about this? What can I take from this? And another game I looked at is BioShock Infinite. Not necessarily for the architecture in some cases, more the environment and the way it flows. So I got the art book here for BioShock, and there's some really cool designs early on, like the concept art of all the characters and the buildings and the weapons and things like that. And I think it's pretty cool to see the development, and that's kind of what I want to go for with my development, is to show at every angle what I come up with. And there's also characters, which is probably the biggest thing I'm going to struggle with, even if I bother to, because as it stands, I don't really need to add a 3D character into my game to get a high mark. That's not how the criteria works. It's just show your development, show how extensive your work is and how good it is, and see if you can produce something really amazing, and then onward from there is what you get marked on. Excuse me. Here I'm texturing, which is kind of the final thing I do in this developer log. About 15 minutes of texturing, and I also work on sort of finalizing the designs. I put the windows in, I texture them, and I also put the doorway in, or the door itself. The game engine I'm working with is Unity 3D, which I've already stated that in a previous developer log, but I feel that that's going to limit me in terms of the graphical quality. But I think it doesn't matter what engine you're using. If you can make a game look good in an engine that isn't so powerful, that shows your understanding, I feel, of game development and game design, because you have to look at it from a designer's standpoint as well. If a graphic designer can make something look amazing, it doesn't matter what way they're showing it, what's presenting it, because the Unity 3D as a game engine is very powerful. But a better one is UDK, but I just don't know how to program in UDK. If I could, I would definitely use UDK to make games, but it's just not really viable for the chosen project. At least I've used UDK, I just don't really agree with the workflow, because I'm just not very good at it. So there's no need for me to use it as well, because Unity is a lot easier to use, and you can get Unity Pro, which makes things look even better. I think in the long run I probably would use UDK, but understanding it, it's just there's a lot to it. So here I'm just importing textures and applying materials to the meshes, in particular the pillars in this case, which I use like a white brick for, I do believe, or a brown brick initially, and then I change it. Yeah, it's like a brown red brick, but in the later ones it's white brick, because I think the textures are too dark and it just doesn't suit the theme. Yeah, it's more of a like light brown brick. So I texture the windows. I think I use two different textures because I'm indecisive on which one I like the most. I go with this one in the end, which is more of a warehouse window. And again, I'm using white brick instead of brown brick, which is, for me, I think a personal preference, and it just looks better. But of course later on the textures do improve, and the way I put things together improve, and my modelling even improves, which is surprising because it's just such a short space of time between each video and each section of development. So here I'm just doing the door. Very fancy door. I experiment with all the different colours. My textures I use are from a site called gametextures.com. If you're curious into what I use, I've had it for a while now, and I've got over 300 textures. So here I'm sort of just panning around. There's not really much I can do to this model at this point, and that's why I decide to leave it. I think I just mesh combine. I delete all the history for it, and then I start working on another building. And this is a lot cooler because I can work with different angles in this one, and you'll see later on where I've got buildings that have really complex angles to them. Like this here, I'm snapping to the grid but still keeping the same sort of geometry, but at the same time it's got a different style to it. Like it's not just a flat wall. I've tried to actually excel myself and change the way the building looks. So I think this developer log's coming to an end now, so I hope you enjoyed watching the development for this section of Rifter. And in the next one, I'm not entirely sure what we'll be doing. I think maybe some Photoshop work, maybe a smaller developer log just to get some ideas out there, and maybe the later buildings, which is probably going to be quite later on, really, because I've got dozens of models sort of standing in the bay, just waiting to be used. So, and I've also got all the props, which I still haven't showed. I think towards the end of this project, I'll show everything I've modelled so far, all the scenes, and the final, obviously the final project, which is the whole purpose of this concept. So thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next developer log.